Mm.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, दंडवत प्रणाम।
प्रवीणा माता जी, दंडवत प्रणाम। हरे कृष्ण।
हरे कृष्णा
हरे
प्रभु
कृष्ण
जी, दंडवत प्रणाम प्रभु जी। All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev प्रभु जी।
राधा भावनी माता जी, दंडवत प्रणाम। और गौरी श्रील प्रभुपाद।
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, दंडवत प्रणाम।
पद्मा माता जी, दंडवत प्रणाम। हरे कृष्ण। So Srinivas Prabhu is back in India now?
Yes, Prabhuji. I came back last 1 week back.
Very nice. Good. Okay. So we'll jump into our Bhagavatam continuation. We have covered 2 chapters in past 2 days. I mean 2 weekends. Today we will be covering the 3rd chapter. The approach I'm trying to take is summarize the whole chapter. And so we are going in detail, but we are not going into lot of detail also, just for the sake of the overview is complete. Om Agyantimirandhasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamanyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sadhujatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांता स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे पंचतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरम्। So first chapter of Shrimad Bhagavatam is the conversation between Sutta Goswami and the sages of Naimisharanya headed by Sanaka Rishi. And we see that the sages ask 6 questions the first question the sages ask is, what is ultimate good for all living entities? And that is answered in the second chapter as Savai Pumsam Paro Dharma, that the ultimate good for all living entity is devotional service that should be unmotivated, uninterrupted. And if there is unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service, then that can completely satisfy oneself. Then the second question they ask is, Oh Sutta Goswami, you are very learned in the scriptures. The scriptures are very vast. You have heard the scriptures from your spiritual master Sukadev Goswami. You have read them personally. You have explained them also. And you have menially served your spiritual master, so you have got the realization of all of them. So now please tell me in the essence, what is the nichod, what is the sum and substance, what is the summary of all the Vedic scriptures? And that is also answered by Sutta Goswami in the second chapter, and he says the sum and substance is the process of bhakti. And Sutta Goswami describes that the process of bhakti begins with serving the devotee, by which one develops taste in Vasudev Katha Ruchi, and as one develops taste in hearing about Krishna, one's heart becomes cleansed. As heart becomes cleansed, passion, ignorance goes away. As passion, ignorance goes away, goodness is established. One come to the stage of Nishtha, Naishtiki, Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. One becomes steady in one's devotional service. As anarthas goes away, one becomes steady in devotional service. Gradually, one develops taste. And as one deepens, one will realize Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam. One will realize Bhagwan, and then one will go back to God. So this is the essence of the sum and substance of all the Vedic scriptures, is the process of bhakti itself. And then the sages ask the question, why did Krishna appear from the womb of Vasudeva and Devaki? So Sutta Goswami says in second chapter, Krishna appeared from the womb of Vasudeva and Devaki to reclaim the conditioned souls, because conditioned souls have forgotten their relationship with me, and they have become very much absorbed in materialistic activities. Their activities, their thoughts, everything is absorbed in this material world. They have become very much bound up by this word, by this temporary existence. And therefore, when Krishna comes, Krishna performs his pastimes. Anyone who hears them, who remembers them, who glorifies them, or does anything connected to Krishna, then the material nature will loosen its grip on those personalities. And they will pave their way back to Godhead. And for this particular reason, the Shrimad Bhagavatam is composed so everyone gets an opportunity to hear about the glories of the Lord and glories of the devotees of the Lord. So why did Krishna come? To reclaim us. Reclaim because we don't belong to this world. This world Mahaprabhu compared to Mrityu Sagar, Bhavam Buddha, the ocean of death. Because all that one is awarded in this world is death. That's why it's called Mrityu Sagar. And to reclaim, because we are continuously changing bodies here, but then our eternal life in a relationship with Krishna is very sweet and wanted. So to help us, and if Krishna doesn't come, then this is mentioned as infinite cycle, never ending. So that's why Krishna came to reclaim us. Then the question asked, three questions remains. Tell us about the Purusha avatars. Tell us about the Leela avatars. And after Lord Krishna disappeared, where have the religious principles taken shelter? Whose shelter have the religious principles taken? So this chapter, now second chapter, answers what is the ultimate good, that is bhakti. What is the essence of all the scripture? That is a process of bhakti. Why did Krishna come to reclaim all of us? That was summary of the second chapter. Now third chapter is about many incarnations and about Krishna's position also. This is these two chapters, chapter 2, chapter 3, discuss the answer of Sutta Goswami. And then chapter 4 begins with the history of Bhagavatam, begins with the life of Shrimad Narada Muni, and Vyasadeva lamentation that we will cover next week. So this chapter begins with the description. Now again, 2 questions asked, 3 questions. One is Purushavatara, then Leela Avatara. So this chapter begins with Sutta Goswami describing, hey, listen, there is Karana, Dakshai, Vishnu. If somebody asks, where are these 3 kinds of Vishnu described? They are described in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavatam. And they're described further later also, but the first introduction is in this chapter. So there is Karna, Dakshai, Vishnu, from whose pores there are universes that emanates. And then the Lord expands himself and enters into each universe. And he lies at the bottom of each universe. And when he lies into the bottom, from his sweat, the universe becomes half filled with water. Each universe becomes half filled with water. And that water body is called Garbhodakosha. And because the Lord is in a sleeping state, within that ocean, at the bottom of the ocean, he is called Garbhodaksai Vishnu. Sai means in a sleeping state. And because he is in the Garbhodakosha, he is called the Vishnu who is lying in a sleeping state at the bed of a Garbhodakosha. He becomes Garbhodaksai Vishnu, from whose navel comes a lotus, and then Brahma takes his appearance. And all the universes, they lies within this body of Mahavishnu. Basically, specifically the stem, but the stem is also considered as the body of the Lord. The stem all the way to the lotus, because it's emanate from, just like the umbilical cord. It's also considered as the part of mother's body. So likewise, the Lord, the stem that comes out and the lotus grows, within that stem lies all the planetary system, and the topmost is the planet of Brahma himself. It's also called Satyalok or Brahmalok. And after describing about Karnodak, Garbhodak and Shirodakshai is, so this Vishnu who is lying on the bottom of the universe, Garbhodakshai, he also makes his own planet, another planet, which is made up of milk. So this is Garbhodakshai in Garbhodakosha. Then the Lord resides into a planet planet where the ocean is made of milk. Milk in Sanskrit is called Shira. So because he's lying on the bottom of a milk ocean, he is called Shirodakshai Vishnu. One time, Advaita Acharya was speaking about Mayavad philosophy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard, because Advaita Acharya he wanted Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to consider Advaita as his junior. Mahaprabhu would always respect Advaita. So in order to agitate Lord Chaitanya, so that Mahaprabhu scolds him or becomes angry at him, he was frustrated that why the Lord is respecting me. The Lord should treat me as a servant. So then Advaita Acharya, in order to agitate the Lord, spoke about, hey, everything is Brahman, there is no God. We are all gods. So Mahaprabhu became very angry. Advaita Acharya called many Brahmanas speaking about Brahman and Mayavad philosophy. So Mahaprabhu became so angry, Mahaprabhu ran to him, Mahaprabhu pushed him down, Mahaprabhu started beating him. He sat on his chest and beating Advaita. Advaita was very old. Then Advaita was laughing. Advaita was, yes, my desires are fulfilled. Now the Lord is treating me as a servant because he's treating me roughly. I was so happy. Then Mahaprabhu told Advaita, I was sleeping in the ocean of milk. And then you called me here. And now I have come here to establish Bhakti Dharma. And you yourself who called me here speaking about this impersonalistic philosophy. So then this just came to my mind when I was hearing the Shirodakshai Vishnu who is lying at the bottom of the milk. So then Bhagavatam describes further that Garbhodakshai Vishnu is the cause of all incarnations. And then there are various incarnations described. The first incarnation that is described is Kumar, the 4 Kumaras. They appear from the mind of Brahma. And Brahma was given the service to procreate. So Brahma asked them to procreate. And they said, we don't want to become entangled in this world. Rather, we want to just remember the Lord and perform devotional service. So Brahma becomes angry, then further many things happen. So that is first incarnation. Now these Kumaras, so there are 6 kinds of incarnation. This particular chapter describes various incarnations. Some of them are Leela Avataras, some of them are, there are 6, some are Leela Avataras, who comes for a specific pastime. Some are called Shaktiavesh, who are empowered. Like here Narad Muni comes, he is Shaktiavesh, Buddha is Shaktiavesh, 4 Kumara Shaktiavesh, Vyasadeva is Shaktiavesh, Prithu Maharaj Shaktiavesh. So there are many who are Shaktiavesh or empowered for a, empowered, but they are also called incarnation. So one time one person said, like in one of the discussion we were having, I said Buddha is an incarnation of Lord Krishna. So then he heard somewhere else and they said Buddha is not an incarnation, Buddha is Jiva Tattva. So that Prabhu asked me, they said, see Prabhu, there is contradiction. You said he is incarnation, they said he is Jiva Tattva. So how do we understand when there are contradiction? I said both are correct. Because he is incarnation, because he is Shaktivesh avatar. So he is considered incarnation. He is Jiva Tattva because he is Jiva, who was empowered by the Lord for the specific purpose of non-violence. So he is Jiva. So Narad Muni is also Jiva Tattva, 4 Kumaras also Jiva Tattva, Vyasadeva also Jiva Tattva. But they are mentioned here as the incarnation because they were empowered by the Lord. Okay, so first there is a description of the 4 Kumaras, and then there is a description of Bor, who lifted the earth from when the earth was pushed. So what Hiranyaksha did, he was a big demon. The earth was balanced by its weight and scientifically. So the Bor demon, he took like unlimited amount of gold from the core of Mother Earth. And Mother Earth became hollow and her weight reduced and became very unstable. So left the orbit of which it was rotating around the sun, left the orbit and went down into the Garbhodak ocean. So the Lord came as a boar and he lifted her on the tusk and brought it back and killed Hiranyaksha. The next incarnation is Narad Muni. Narad Muni, he collected the Bhakti section of the Vedas and propagated Bhakti Yoga. Narad Muni is like pure Bhakti. All his disciples, whether it's Dhruva or Prahlad or Ambarish or Chitraketu Maharaj and hence Vritrasura also in the next incarnation, whether it is the hunter, he gave pure bhakti. And Narad Muni also inspired non-fruitive action. Bhagavatam says. Non-fruitive action means anybody is overly engaged in this material existence, which is very fruitive. Fruitive means what will I get? Fruitive actions leads to arise because of attachment, leads to further attachment. But then as long as we are attached in this world, we will stay in this world. Because this world is called Mrityu Sagar. All that is awarded to us is Mrityu in this world. And if we are attached, then we get repeated Mrityus only. So, but if we are detached, and then like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram, Patita Maam Vishame Bhavam Buddha. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your kinkar, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other, I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Somehow or other. Patita means I have fallen. Then Mahaprabhu says, please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as an atom at your lotus feet. In other words, please give me the shelter of your lotus feet. Pick me up. There, no birth and death. So that's why Narad Muni inspired that. Then the next is Nar and Narayan, Nar Narayan Rishi. They lived in Himalayas, performed severe austerities. They controlled their senses and they showed how to practice penances or austerities. Then Lord Kapila, he gave teachings to Mother Devahuti, and he gave other teachings also. Dattatreya came as son of Atri and Anusuya. He gave teachings to Prahalad and others. Then there is Yagya. Yagya was the son of Akuti and Prajapati Ruchi. So Swambhuva Manu had 2 sons and 3 daughters. One of his daughter was Devahuti. One of his son was Uttanapad. One of his daughter was Akuti. One was Prasuti. So Akuti got married to Prajapati Ruchi and they gave birth to Yagya, who was also the incarnation of the Lord. Then King Rishabdev, who gave his teachings to the 100 sons. In 5th canto he comes. He is another incarnation. Then Prithu Maharaj, he came from the body of King Vena. Then Matsya, he came because there was a inundation after Chakshusha Manu. Then there is Kurma Avatar, he helped to stabilize the Mandara mountain during the churning of Milk Ocean. Dhanvantari, he brought the nectar pot and gave the teachings of Ayurveda. Mohini Murti, he allured the demoniac people by her beauty, and then gave the nectar pot that came from Dhanvantari to the demigods. And Lord Narasimhadev, he killed Hiranyakashipu and protected Prahlad. Then there is Vamandev, who took away the pride of King Bali, Maharaj Bali Maharaj, by taking the 3 steps of land. In that, he took the 3 planetary systems and forced Bali to surrender. And then, out of gratitude for Bali's complete surrender, he became the gatekeeper of Bali Maharaj in Sutala planet, which is one of the lower planetary systems. And Bhrigupati came. Bhrigupati is Parashura. He killed Kshatriyas 21 times, the whole Kshatriya race, because Kshatriya are meant to serve under the guidance of Brahmanas. But when Kshatriyas became rebellious against Brahmanas, then the Lord came as Parashura and killed them 21 times, the whole race. Then Vyasadev came. Vyasadev was born to Parasar Muni and Satyavati. Satyavati later on was married to Shantanu Maharaj, whose son was Bhishmadev. So Vyasadev came for the purpose of writing the Vedic scriptures. His literary incarnation, he is empowered to write. The epitome of all the scriptures he gave is what we are reading, Shrimad Bhagavatam. Then Lord Ramchandra came and he performed beautiful, beautiful pastimes. He boiled the Indian Ocean, killed Ravana, and performed many other superhuman activities. Then Krishna and Balaram came. They eradicated the burden of the earth, because Mother Earth was burdened and she went in the form of a cow and prayed to Brahma, and they all went to Narayan. Narayan said, Swam Bhagwan Krishna will come. So Krishna and Balaram came. Then Buddha came, who to delude the atheist, to delude those who were demonic people and non-violence. Then at last Kalki will come. These are the 25 incarnations mentioned. And Kalki will come because all the kings, it is said, will be degraded to plunderers. They all will become very, very selfish, and Kalki will come to annihilate all of them. And only very, very few, those who are still practicing religious principles, will remain, and they will be instrument to begin the Satyuga, because only pure souls will remain, and then that will gradually translate to Satyuga. Their progeny will be good, and then all good souls will come, and that will become Satyuga. So there are, and then in the 26th verse, after describing up to 25th verse, all these incarnations are described. This is because the sages of Sutta Goswami tell us about the Purusha avatars, tell us about the Lila avatars. So far, Sutta Goswami in first 4 verses describe Purusha avatar. See, there is There is Karnadak Vishnu, there is Garbhodak Vishnu, and there is Shirodakshai Vishnu. Then Sutta Goswami says that the source of all these incarnations is Garbhodaksha Vishnu. This is very, very interesting because one of the incarnation that is mentioned is Krishna and Balaram. So please hear this very carefully. Very important section of Bhagavatam. So there are many incarnations described, and Prabhupada gives the definition of incarnation. Prabhupada says incarnation means one who descends. One who descends from spiritual to material world means he has incarnated here. That's meaning of incarnation. Then it is described that the source of, then he says that Garbhodaksha Vishnu, from him comes various incarnations for various purposes. Then Sutta Goswami describes in chronological order who came. Treta Yoga, Dwapara Yoga, Kali Yoga, who all are coming. Then he also says that Krishna and Balaram are coming. Then after finishing all the incarnations up to Kalki, then Sutta Goswami says, actually the Lord has innumerable incarnations. So clearly mentioning that these are not the only incarnations. These are some of the incarnations mentioned. Some people say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's incarnation, why his name is not there? His name is there. His name is there in a hidden way. His name is there in 7th canto, at Channavatar mentioned, hidden incarnation. And his name is there in the 11th, in the 11th canto, which says that a Mahapurush will come who is Krishna, but whose color is not black, and he will spread the glories of the holy name. He will chant his own names, and he will start the Sankirtan Yajna. And even Brahma and Shiva will take shelter of the lotus feet of such a Mahapurusha. But because he's a hidden incarnation, it's not clearly mentioned in Bhagavatam. And it is said that only intelligent people in this age of Kali will worship this incarnation, and their mode of worshipping this incarnation is through the chanting of the holy names of Krishna. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishna. He will describe about Krishna and glorify Krishna. He will come as a devotee of Krishna, but a Krishna means, but his color will not be black. Krishna also means black. So Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishna. He is Krishna himself, but his color is not black. And he will sing his own glories, came in a mood of his own devotee. So in this way, and then there are many other incarnations that are not there in these. So that's why Sutta Goswami says, hey, I cannot describe all the incarnations. Purusha avatars are 3, Leela avatars are unlimited. So here, Sutta Goswami says, avatara hi ashankhyeya hare sattva nidhe dvija yatha vidasena kulya sarasaha syu sahasrasaha. He says, avatara hi asankhyeya. Sankhya means counting. Asankhyeya means unlimited. You cannot count them. Avatari Ashankhya. The Supreme Lord has innumerable incarnations. An example is giving like rivulets flowing from inexhaustible source of water. Unlimited rivulets are flowing into. So unlimited incarnations. And finally, after describing all the incarnations, then Sutta Goswami makes the most important statement of Bhagavatam. It is also called as Paribhasha Sutra of Shrimad Bhagavatam, Jiva Goswami says. Paribhas Sutra means the essential verse of Shrimad Bhagavatam, or the concluding verse in a way. So it's called Ete Chamsa Kala Pumsa Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam Indradi Vyakulam Lokam Hridayanti Yuge Yuge. So here is how Sutta Goswami is describing it. So all the incarnations are actually incarnation of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. But he is also, along with all the other, he is also plenary portion of Swayam Krishna. Krishna is Swayam Bhagwan. So in other words, from Krishna comes Vishnu, and from Vishnu comes all the other incarnations. So first Purusha avatar, though there is Vishnu, all are Vishnu's incarnation. And then he describes Krishna Balaram also. And then he says, but Krishna is not avatar, Krishna is avatari. Krishna is the fountainhead of all the incarnations. We also see Jayadev Goswami, who is one of the devotional poet in our sampradaya. He also wrote Dasha Avatar Stotra, where this verse also comes. Meena Sharira, Shukura Sharira, Vamana Sharira, Jai Jagadisha Hare. Narahari Rupa, Jai Jagadisha Hare. So there are different incarnations described, but he does not describe Krishna there. He described as a Haladhar. Balaram ji came. And after Balaram, he says, Jaya Goswami says, so first came Ramchandra, then came Balaram, and then came Buddha, and then came Kalki. So in this way, he described the Shavatar, the Shastras, and then he says Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. So same thing here, although he described Krishna as, and Balaram as one who descended, and then he clarifies that Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. And then this chapter describes that by remembering these different incarnations of the Lord, a person who loves Krishna, who has affection for the Lord, should love all the incarnations of the Lord also. A devotee, a true devotee, when he hears about even, whether it is Dhanvantari or Ramchandra or Narsimha, he loves all the incarnation. Meena, fish incarnation, tortoise, Kurma, Sukura, boar incarnation, Vamana, Brahman incarnation. A devotee feels joy in his heart because this is all Lord. His Lord is coming in different ways and different forms for different purposes, but ultimately it's one's beloved. So Falastuti, simply by reciting the transcendental births and activities of the Lord with devotion, one gets relief from all miseries. So, and the Falastuti of just by hearing the names or one line description of all of them also, if one recite this regularly, one will get relief from all miseries. Then Sutta Goswami says, so see, I have described so many incarnations, but one is not an incarnation. And what is it? Virat Roop. Virat Roop is not counted as the avatar, such as Matsya Kurma, because other incarnation, their body is transcendental, but the Virat Roop body is not transcendental. Shrimad Bhagavatam describes the hairs of the Virat Roop are the trees, then the ocean represent the eye, sun and moon are the eyes of the Virat Roop. So Virat Roop is described as a material element. Then Shrimad Bhagavatam clarifies, and Shrimad Bhagavatam says, see, the Lord body is Vishuddha Sattva, transcendental. It is called Chidatma, Chidatmanaha, Bhagavatam says. That it is free from the material nature and it is transcendental, Chidatma. And Arupa, it is purely spiritual. But the Virat Rupa is not like that. Bhagavatam says the material realm manifested by lost external energy, Virat Rupa, is a material and imaginary conception of the Lord. Now, the example is given just like the living entity. Living entity has a gross body. Living entity has a subtle body, which is Mana Buddhi Ahankar, mind, intelligence, false ego. The living entity has a soul, which is our true identity, and we are lying in the region of this body. So likewise, the Virat Rupa is like the material conception of the Lord, and the Lord is Vishuddha Sattva. So universe also has a material and gross, has a gross and subtle form. But just like the gross and subtle body lies on the spirit soul, likewise, the subtle and gross form of the universe is lying on the Lord himself. Because they actually, ultimately, they emanate from the Lord, and the Lord is considered as the super soul of the universe. Just like the soul, or seen this way, the soul is aware of the body. Anybody touches the body, gives pain to the body, we will know where the pain is coming from, what part of the body is not functioning. So we are conscious of the whole body, and the Lord is conscious of the entire universe. The Lord is in every atom. The Lord is everywhere, all pervading. And Lord is conscious of every aspect of the universe. Who is doing what? Who has what desires? The Lord is full control of the, like we have control over the body. We know what is happening. We are conscious of the body. The Lord is conscious of the universe. So he is called as the soul of the universe. But the Virat Rupa external body is material, but because it is centered around the Lord, that is why it is also called as an incarnation. It is also called as a form of the Lord, but it is not an incarnation. Okay, so in this way, there is a small small note that says the gross and subtle bodies of the Jiva are both material, because gross body, subtle body of the Jiva are material and rest on the spiritual soul. Similarly, the gross and subtle universe of the universal form are material and rest on the Supreme Lord. So in that way, it's the Virat Rupa of the Lord, but it is material by nature, but it is based on the Lord Himself. And then after describing all the incarnation and describing how Virat Rupa is not considered as one of those incarnation, and how the incarnation are unlimited in nature, and how Krishna is the source of all incarnation, and rest all incarnation, they actually come from Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So after describing all this, then Sutta Goswami give an instruction to all the sages, and he says that the purpose of a person's life is so that he can realize the the Vishuddha Rupa of the Lord. He can realize that the transcendental. He can realize Bhagavan. He can realize Krishna. This is the purpose of a human's life. And then he says one is not able to realize that person because of the influence of illusory energy. Illusory energy covers us and makes us forget our relationship with the Lord. And then we become engaged in activities. We become engaged and absorbed in various activities in this world. And we become distracted from our real purpose, which is to reawaken our relationship with the Lord. We become distracted from that, and we become very much absorbed in this existence. And this is the influence of the illusory energy. So Sutta Goswami says, when the illusory energy subsides and one is enriched with knowledge by the Lord's grace, then one is situated in his own glorious position. So basically, Sutta Goswami says, because of illusory energy, we become absorbed in activities in this world. But when the illusory energy will subside, which is by Lord's mercy only will happen, if it goes down, then one will come to real knowledge, which is by the grace of the Lord. And then one works in a right direction. Then, after giving this instruction to Sutta Goswami, then he glorifies the Lord. Sutta Goswami, he says the Lord has spotless pastimes. The Lord creates, maintains, and destroys the universe, but still he remains unaffected from these activities. The Lord is situated within the heart of all living entity. The Lord is completely independent. The Lord is full of six opulences. The Lord is the master of all the senses. And um, yeah. And one can realize this Vishuddha form, transcendental form of the Lord, through unreserved, uninterrupted, and favorable service onto his lotus feet. Only by bhakti can we realize Krishna. Specifically, the word used unreserved, uninterrupted, and favorable. Unreserved, reserved means I have my own blocks and I'm not open. This is a reservation. Prabhu chant, no, I don't like to chant. So I have some reservation about chanting, or I have some reservation about some aspect. So when we become unreserved and then become favorable, reservation makes us unfavorable actually. So when we become unreserved, open to render service to the Lord, open to get knowledge, understand, open to practice on that knowledge. When we become unreserved, favorable means anukul, And when our service to the Lord becomes uninterrupted, then the Lord who is all powerful can be realized. Uninterrupted, favorable, unreserved devotional service to the Lord. So after hearing, now this is the link to the next section. And few more verses remains here. After hearing that the Lord is understood only by bhakti, Sutta Goswami, after describing the different incarnations and the position of Krishna, then he says that the Lord can be the goal of person's life is to realize Vishuddha form of Bhagavan. How Virat Rupa first he says is not considered as an incarnation because the form is considered as material. Then the goal of person's life is to realize Bhagavan, the absolute truth. But one is not able to do so because of the effect of illusory energy. When illusory energy subsides, one will come to the real knowledge of one's true identity and one's relationship with the Lord. And having gained that knowledge, just knowledge is not sufficient. Having gained that knowledge, when one renders unreserved, favorable, uninterrupted service to the Lord, in this way, one can attain perfection and escape this Mrityu Sagar. Then, or basically through bhakti, Krishna can be known. Then after hearing that the Lord is understood only by bhakti, the sages of Naimittara were lamenting that they did not have any bhakti. The sages were thinking, Sutta Goswami is telling about bhakti, but we are devoid of bhakti, and they were thinking in this way. So in order to encourage them, Sutta Goswami, he glorifies then all the sages headed by Saunaka Rishi. Sutta Goswami says, actually, you all are very fortunate because you have made such wonderful inquiries about the Lord. Second chapter also, Sutta Goswami says that these questions are glorious because these questions centered around Krishna. So you all are most fortunate for making such wonderful inquiries about the Lord, which invoke transcendental ecstatic love into Him and guarantee full immunity from birth and death. In other words, now the last section glorifies Bhagavatam because we discussed about Purusha Avatar, we discussed about Leela Avatar, and now the last question remains, where have the religious principles taken shelter of after disappearance of Lord Krishna? When Krishna was there, he made sure that dharma is established. And when Krishna has disappeared, where has dharma now gone? So Sutta Goswami says, whatever inquiries you have made, they are perfect. And these inquiries will result in full immunity from birth and death. And how? Then the question also comes, how can the illusory energy subside? How can these inquiries lead to immunity from birth and death? And where have the religious principles now gone after Lord Krishna's departure? And the answer to all of them is the Shrimad Bhagavatam. So last 5 verses basically describes the glories of Bhagavatam. And it describes Brahma Samitam Uttashloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreshaya Lokasya. So it says Brahma Samitam means this glories of Bhagavatam are described now. Brahma means Supreme Lord. Brahma. So Brahma Samhita means this Bhagavatam is an incarnation of Brahma or is an incarnation of Lord Shri Krishna. And then next says that this Bhagavatam describes the activities of Supreme Lord. This Bhagavatam is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. This Bhagavatam is ultimate good for all people. And this Bhagavatam will bring all success, all bliss, and all perfect. Will bring all bliss in our life, will make our life all perfect and all successful. So this is the verse number 40, the third chapter that describes how Shrimad Bhagavatam is an incarnation of Brahman. Or Brahma means Krishna is Para Brahman or completely transcendental by nature, is considered as incarnation of Lord Krishna. Then 41st verse, Sutta Goswami says that this Shrimad Bhagavatam is the cream of all the Vedic scriptures. It was spoken by Vyasadeva to his son Sukadev, and Sukadev then 42nd verse says Sukadev Goswami spoke it to Maharaj Parikshit, who sat surrounded by the sages on the bank of Ganges, awaited death without taking any food or drink. Without eating or drinking anything, he sat on the bank of Ganges to hear this same Bhagavatam from Sukadev. And this is the answer to the last question, that this Shrimad Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun, dispelling the darkness of ignorance of Kali Yuga. This Kali Yuga is very powerful, sage of coral hypocrisy, but this Bhagavatam will dispel the darkness of this age of Kali. It has arisen just after Krishna departed from his abode. As soon as Krishna left, Bhagavatam descended. And this Bhagavatam is accompanied by religion, knowledge, and everything else. So whoever takes shelter of Bhagavatam will know what dharma is, will practice dharma, will have the complete knowledge. Illusory energy by reading will subside, and he will be able to realize Bhagavan. And this Bhagavatam is like sun in this dark age of Kali. And then Sukadev Goswami spoke to Maharaj Parikshit, who heard with rapt attention without any food or drink. Same Bhagavatam. Now I'm speaking this to all of you. So that's the end of this chapter. And that's all we covered today. If there are any discussion, next chapter is the appearance of Sri Narad Muni. Okay, so let's see if somebody would like to say anything. How is it going? Is it too slow? Is it too fast? Devotees can give reviews also. Is it good speed? Or anything they want to say?
It's good, Prabhuji. You're able to understand the like in the form of a story, right? So it is very nice to hear, Prabhuji. It's not very fast. It is not very slow for me. Thank you.
Okay, Mataji, thank you.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, I am agree to the Shamla Radha Mataji's point. Not very slow, not very fast, Prabhuji. It's going very good way, and we understand all the story, the way you present, and then correlate to the, Prabhuji, that past time that happened that time for the, yeah, Prabhuji. It's good, Prabhuji. I am agree, Prabhuji. Whatever the way you teach to us, Prabhuji, and koti danvat, Prabhuji, again to you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna. Okay. Anything else anyone has?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Dandavat Pranam, Mataji.
Yeah, as Mataji's mentioned, like it is going in the right pace, Prabhuji, since you explain very clearly and slowly, like we are able to recall and contemplate on the past times as well as the teachings, Prabhuji. One clarification, like you said that when we have reservation for the devotional services like chanting, it is in terms of the number of rounds, or can you please elaborate on the reservation point, Prabhuji?
You mean recitation of Bhagavatam?
You said like any devotional services like chanting, if we have a reservation, if we are doing it with reservation, like we cannot progress much, but without any reservation, like
Without reservation, favorable and uninterrupted devotional service will help us realize Bhagavan. Bhagavatam.
like reservation in the sense like we are like limiting ourselves to the number of rounds, like 16 rounds.
Oh. No, but Bhagavatam says reservation. How Prabhupada explains reservation means reservation to say to the knowledge that is presented by Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam says Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavatam says Kali Kare Naam Rupe Krishna Avatar. The Lord has incarnated in this age in the form of his holy name. Bhagavatam says by serving the devotees of the Lord, one will develop Vasudeva Katha Ruchi. That desire to hear about, the taste to hear about Krishna. So whatever Bhagavatam says, like Bhagavatam also says, humble and submissive, humble. Bhagavatam says submissive and attentive hearing. will attain perfection. Submissive and attentive means I'm attentively hearing Bhagavatam, everything Bhagavatam says, and I'm submissive. So submissive means no reservation. So unreserved hearing. Sometimes you may be attached to concept. No, all gods are same. Why Krishna? So now I have a block now. No, why this? I'm doing my arati and this is sufficient. Why holy name? Now I'm reserved to what Bhagavatam says. So when we are open to Bhagavatam, what it says, and then willing to apply, then very soon we'll attain perfection. And then once one has more time, and if one is inspired to do more devotional service, then that is very nice. But that's not what we meant. Is it all right?
Yeah, that clarifies a lot, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji. All right. So I guess we'll end here. Panchakalpatarubhyascha vipa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anant Koti Vaishnavendra ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Dandavat pranam. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam Prabhuji.
Dandavat.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Tanvat
Thank you
Pranam.
for starting Bhagavatam. It's always very nectar in the form of stories, so it's very
Yeah,
nice
after a
to
long.
hear.
Yeah. I was also feeling some Satyajam from Bhagavatam. Very nice.
I wish you take it many chapters of that and many cantos.
It will be fast and it will be in sync. Yes, Mataji. I hope. Next session onwards is mainly stories. These 3 chapters were answering the 6 questions. Grateful. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare